Fire Bear Redemption, written by Joy McNeil. Even through Logan's sunglasses, the heat on the road surface caused the view ahead to shimmer like a small lake. If only it was water, the newly graduated firefighter thought to himself. The temperatures in Southern Alberta that summer had been extreme, with no sight of rain in the forecast ahead. There were even a couple of recruits from Logan's training course who had succumbed to the intense weather conditions. It had happened when they were wearing their thick turnout gear and fighting a staged structure fire in their last few days of training. Logan had been directly behind Ben when he collapsed, and he had to drag the other firefighter back out of the burning building into clean air. Once the rookie had been revived, he made it clear to the instructor he would not be returning again. Logan felt kind of sorry for Ben, and although he understood the reason why his fellow classmate decided to leave the course, he would never consider himself a quitter, and he was soon back inside the burning structure in intense heat, working alongside the other trainee firefighters to douse the flames. As he drove towards his new town, those thoughts were so vivid in the young man's mind that he almost missed seeing the old hobo on the roadside, looking hopefully in at the driver with his thumb extended upward. Logan hit the brakes a little too fast as he pulled the pickup truck over, and it fishtailed on the dry dirt, sending a plume of dusty brown earth flying over the truck. The hitchhiker didn't seem deterred by the sudden braking of the old pickup, and he hurried towards it. He was desperate for some shade from the hot sun that had been beating down on him relentlessly for the past 2 hours. "Where are you heading?" Logan asked the hobo as the man jumped into the passenger seat. "Anywhere and everywhere, son. I'm mighty obliged that you were kind enough to stop for me. Seems folks around here don't take kindly to strangers on the roadside," the man replied as he took off his wide-brimmed hat and wiped the sweat from his brow with a scarf that he had pulled from his jeans pocket. "I guess we don't get too many folk hitching rides these days. My journey ends at the next town 40 kilometers up the road, but it is as good a place as any to stop for a time if you need a rest from this heat. I know the liquor store has a good selection of food and the best iced coffee I've ever had," Logan suggested. "Even though you can fry eggs on the road at the moment, I've never been one for them fancy coffees. A hot brew straight from the pot does me just fine. You ain't gonna get me drinking no iced coffee, son," the old boy chuckled. Logan smiled over at the old guy before checking for traffic and pulling back out onto the road. At first they remained silent, both caught up in their own thoughts. However, Logan was never one to stay quiet for long, and he couldn't help admiring the carved stump bear pendant the hobo had strung around his neck. So he thought he'd ask the man where he got it from. "This old thing, I carved it many years ago." The hobo took the pendant from around his neck and held it up for Logan to get a better look at it. "See the shape between the bear's legs?" he said with a slight waver in his voice. "It's shaped like a bear, too. There's a reason I carved it like that. I made a smaller bear for my baby daughter with that piece of crystal. Something special to keep us connected. It was not long after that her mama left me, and I never saw them again. I can't say I blame her, though. I was much too old for her anyway. Truth be known, I've been searching for my daughter these past few years. I want to see her before I die. When I think I'm getting close to finding her, something always gets in the way. Anyways, that is enough about me. What's your story, son?" "Well, there's not a lot to tell you, other than I'm starting a new job as an apprentice mechanic in Claresholm. I just finished training at the Calgary Fire Training Academy, so I'll be volunteering at the fire department there, too." "I wouldn't say that is nothing to tell. Seems you're going to be a whole lot of busy with that lot ahead of you," the old man said with a smile. Logan chuckled in reply. However, deep down inside, he was feeling a little apprehensive about his new life ahead of him. He'd spent all of his teenage years working on his parents' farm. This was the first time he had left home, but at age 22 he knew it was time to move out and become independent. The chance of working as a mechanic, with free accommodation on the premises and the fire hall a short way down the road, was an opportunity too good to pass up, even if it meant leaving all his friends and family behind. The men chatted about all manner of topics during their drive. It seemed the hobo had lived an interesting life, and he was most willing to share all of it with Logan. Time passed by quickly, and it was not long before they were nearing Claresholm. However, before they reached the town, the hobo asked Logan if he could stop the truck and let him out. "I need to stretch my legs for a time, but I am mighty obliged for the lift," he said this as he pulled a packet of cigarettes from his shirt pocket. Once the truck had pulled over at a much gentler pace this time, the hobo offered Logan a cigarette and asked if he had a lighter. "I don't smoke, sir, but you can take these with you." Logan reached over to the glove box and pulled out a packet of matches. "Thanks, son. My lighter ran out this morning, and I've been hanging out for a drag ever since. I kind of figured you weren't the smoking type. Wish I had never started. They didn't have them fancy warning signs about tobacco killing you when I first started smoking. Darn it. And I'm too hooked to ever quit now." He shut the passenger door and waved his ride goodbye. Once Logan had pulled out onto the road again, he looked back through the mirror and saw their hobo making his way off through the nearby field, heading towards an abandoned barn. He couldn't figure out why the hobo had not gone with him all the way into town, but he thought maybe the old man didn't have the cash for accommodation and was going to shelter in the barn overnight. It didn't take long for Logan to reach the garage where he was going to work. The building looked in need of a lick of paint, but apart from that it seemed sound enough. He took the keys from the ignition and shut the door to the pickup with his resounding slam, so that his new boss would know that someone had arrived. However, no one emerged from inside the open main doors, so Logan walked into the workshop to see if he could find the owner. There was a rather beat-up looking car just inside the door, with a pair of work boots and blue overhaul legs hanging out from under it. "Hey there," he called out, bending his head downward so the person working under the vehicle could hear him. "I'm looking for Mr. Stacy. Do you know where I can find him?" A muffled reply came from the person, which Logan was unable to hear, but they soon slid out from under the car, covered in grease and looking rather bemused. "Oh, hi," Logan said again, with a shocked look on his face. "Sorry I didn't catch what you said, but can you please point me in the direction of Mr. Stacy?" "There is no Mr. Stacy, it's just Stacy, and you're looking at her. I figure you must be my new apprentice, Logan Wells." "Yes, ma'am, I am," Logan replied, a little stunned that his new boss was a rather attractive young female. "You can stop right there calling me ma'am. It's just plain Stacy. You got that?" "Sure thing, Stacy," Logan added. He now felt a little foolish and wondered whether he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. It wasn't so much a problem that his new employer was a woman. It was more the fact that she had such a fiery attitude to go along with it. "Well, now we have that little issue sorted. Grab your gear and I'll show you where you'll be sleeping. I ain't got much time because Larry will be here for his heap of junk soon, and I still ain't done fixing it." Logan hurried back to his truck and was soon following Stacy upstairs to the second floor of the building. "I swapped the rooms around so you have the larger bedroom nearest the stairs. I figured because you're volunteering for the fire department, you're going to be paged at some ridiculous hour of the night, and I need my sleep. I'm like a grizzly bear with a thorn in his paw if I'm woken up abruptly, so you mind you'd better be tiptoeing down those stairs." Logan just smiled kindly at Stacy, and he went to place his bags inside the room. It was mighty large indeed, as he stepped over to the window to look outside. He noticed it had a commanding view of the township. "Right, well, let's get Larry's car running, and you can tell me a bit more about yourself while we are fixing it," Stacy added impatiently, as she drummed her fingers on the doorframe. That afternoon and early evening went by quickly, and Logan almost forgot he had arranged to meet the fire chief at 8 o'clock. Instead of wasting time getting into his truck, he jogged up the street to the fire hall. It only took him all of 3 minutes to get there. The chief seemed a good sort, and he welcomed the new rookie warmly. He took no time in showing Logan around the hall, including where his locker and turnout gear were kept. He then handed Logan a pager. "We haven't had too many actual jobs of late, but now I've said that, I've probably jinxed us," he joked candidly. "Now tell me something, Logan, because I'm most curious to know. What do you think of Stacy?" "Well, I've only just met her, but she seems very nice, sir. She sure knows her way around an engine," Logan replied a little apprehensively. He wasn't quite sure why the chief was asking him this question. "Are you sure we were talking about the same gal?" the chief chuckled. "Sure enough, she's a darn good mechanic, but as far as being nice, I'd rather work with a rattlesnake if you get my drift. And just to warn you, don't be thinking she'd make a good girlfriend. The sheriff was dating her for a time, but when he cheated on her, he nearly wore a monkey wrench. If he hadn't been to blame for her outburst, he probably would have arrested her for threatening a police officer. It was the talk of the town for ages. It got so bad he took a new placement elsewhere, but you never heard this from me. You hear?" Logan nodded at the chief with a grin, but inside the misgivings he had about his new boss increased tenfold upon hearing this gossip. The chief went on to explain a few more important details about their procedures to the rookie, before bidding him a good night. With all this fresh information brewing away in Logan's mind, he walked back to the garage and quietly made his way up the stairs. Stacy had already told him she was retiring early that evening, so he tiptoed not to disturb her. However, no sooner had his foot touched the landing on the second floor than his pager started beeping loudly. He turned tail and practically raced back down the stairs and outside, heading for the fire hall as fast as his legs could carry him. There was no time for introductions as the fire crew threw on their turnout gear and manned the trucks. The information on the pager had informed them that they were attending a structure fire 2 kilometers out of town. It was not until they got close to their location that Logan had a sudden sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. He was almost certain this was the same place he had dropped the hobo off earlier that day, and the abandoned barn which was fully involved was the same building the hobo had been heading towards. He quickly informed the fire chief that there may be somebody inside. The chief told him to start running out the hoses, while some of the other crew put on their breathing apparatus. However, as they drew close to the burning barn, the whole structure gave way and landed with a loud crash as it hit the ground. It was then they realized the fire was starting to take hold in the adjoining wheat field and was heading straight towards an oil well. The crew all worked frantically to run out the hoses and stop the fire from reaching such a dangerous source. If the oil well went up, they would be in a whole mess of trouble. Thankfully, the seasoned firefighters soon had the fire under control. Logan was given the job of checking for flare-ups amongst the wheat, while the chief and senior crew members checked out what was left of the barn. It wasn't long before the chief called Logan over to talk to him, and the local sheriff who had just turned up at the scene. "It looks like you were right in thinking there was someone in the barn, Logan. We found human remains in this." With a solemn look on his face, the The chief held out the carved stone bear in the palm of his hand. So I guess the next question is, how did you know about our fatality? Logan wasted no time explaining how he had met the hobo earlier that day. He told the chief and sheriff as much about the old guy as he could, apart from being able to give them an actual name. That was one thing the pair never did get around to exchanging. Logan did, however, let them know about the significance of the carved bear. If there was some way of posting a photo of the bear in as many newspapers as possible, we might be able to locate his daughter, Logan suggested hopefully. Well, I guess that wouldn't hurt. Of course, Central records might be easier, the sheriff stated. However, I will leave that for the RCMP to decide. I don't know when he would have last seen a dentist, Logan replied. His teeth didn't seem to be in any fit state, that is, at least the ones he still had. Well, we will follow up both avenues of inquiry and see what we can dig up. Thanks for your help, the sheriff said. He took the carved bear from the fire chief and headed back to his patrol car to call in his findings. Once all the gear was packed up, the crew made their way back to the fire hall in silence. Logan figured he'd get around to meeting the other firefighters officially at some stage. After dealing with a fatal fire, no one much felt like sharing pleasantries on the way home. It was 1:30 in the morning when Logan finally crawled into bed, and although it was not as comfortable as the bed back home, he soon drifted off to sleep. The alarm clock on Logan's phone still let him know it was time to start a new day. If he'd had half a chance, he would have turned it off and slept until his body clock told him it was time to wake up. Sadly, he knew Stacy would roast him alive if he was late for work on his first full day. She was already in the kitchen reading the newspaper and eating a bowl of granola when he walked in. She looked up at him with a scowl on her face. I'm not sure if I made myself clear to you yesterday. You woke me up thundering down the stairs last night. This is going to be a really short working relationship if I catch you doing that again. You hear me? I'm really sorry, Stacy. The pager caught me off guard. It is the first actual job I've ever been to, and I guess my adrenaline got pumping. I didn't realize I was being so noisy. I suppose it was another of them false alarms, she stated coldly. It seems to happen a lot around here with the fire department. No, actually, it was a fatal structure fire out of town, Logan replied in a quiet voice. That's a darn shame, she said half-heartedly. Well, get yourself some fresh coffee from the pot and whatever else you want to fix for breakfast. We start work at 8 sharp. Stacy's lack of empathy towards the loss of life didn't really bother Logan. He was sure there must be something in this lady's past that made her hard as nails. Being cheated on could well be a factor. He figured that given time, she might start to warm to him a little. Once she felt she could trust him, but he certainly wasn't going to go prying into any of his boss's personal affairs. The day went by quickly with a steady stream of customers showing up with all manner of mechanical problems. It seemed Stacy was well respected by her customers. When old Mrs. Jacobs rode up with a punctured radiator hose, Stacy replaced it free of charge, much to the delight of the elderly woman. I'm going to bring you a blackberry and apple pie next time I'm in town, Stacy, she replied happily as she drove off. That was kind of you to do that for Mrs. Jacobs, Logan couldn't help commenting. Well, she's always bringing me food. It was about time I returned the favor, Stacy replied, brushing off the fact that the time spent fixing the hose would have covered a good number of pies in return. That night the pager stayed quiet, and once again Stacy went to bed early, so Logan sat in his room flicking through Facebook and catching up on the messages from his family and friends. When his mom asked him what Mr. Stacy was like, Logan didn't want to tell her that Stacy was actually a single woman. Knowing his mom, she'd be matchmaking in no time at all, and given what the fire chief had said about Stacy, Logan wanted no part of that plan. It didn't take long for the trainee mechanic's eyes to feel heavy, and soon he was sound asleep. Once more the alarm woke Logan, but after enjoying a decent night's rest, he didn't mind getting out of bed this time. He hit the shower before heading down to the kitchen. Stacy sat in her usual spot at the table with the newspaper spread out in front of her. She didn't seem to notice Logan as he went over to the coffee pot to pour himself a brew. Even when he sat down at the table next to her, she remained silent. However, he couldn't help but notice that she was turning something over in her fingers as she stared intently at the front page before her. Are you okay, Stacy? He asked, as a silent tear rolled down her cheek. Would you be okay if you just read that your father had died? She said blankly. She then let the object that she had been turning over in her fingers fall onto the table. It was a little carved stone bear attached to a silver chain. You are the hobo's daughter? Logan exclaimed in total disbelief. He then remembered the words the hobo had told him. Truth be known, I have been searching for my daughter these past few years. I want to see her before I die. When I think I'm getting close to finding her, something always gets in the way. The young man's heart sank. These words now rang very true. Stacy's pa had been so close to finding his daughter. It had been Logan's good intention in giving the hobo a box of matches, which now had prevented that from ever happening. Logan knew he couldn't blame himself for what had occurred. The old man had said that tobacco was a killer. It had been pretty much decided by the fire crew that the fire had started from a smoldering cigarette butt. All these factors aside, it made it nonetheless painful for Logan to now tell his boss that he had met her father before his death. Stacy sat quietly with tears rolling down her cheeks while Logan relayed the story to her. It seemed unreal to her that this new employee knew more about her father than she ever had. Then something happened in that quiet moment. Once he had finished telling Stacy everything the hobo had told him about his life and how much he had loved and missed his little girl, that hard-nosed, obstinate, demanding young woman melted into Logan's open arms and cried like a baby. Finally she was at peace, knowing that she had been loved by her pa, which is all she had ever wanted to know. The good intentions of Logan giving a stranger a ride on that hot summer's day had answered a lifetime of questions she had never thought would be answered. Stacy was very grateful for what he had done, and she was going to make sure he was the best damn mechanic in the province. She even said she would overlook him making noise if he had to leave suddenly during the night, as long as he helped her train towards becoming a volunteer firefighter too. The end.